How's it going? I'm Andrew with Investors Hub, and our schedules have been a little bit weird, Ted Ohashi's and I, and so we've had to reschedule a few times, but we got him on the show now, and we're going to be talking about the cannabis industry. We're going to be chatting about some companies in his model portfolio, and we're also going to discuss some cannabis legislation. And also, I want to get his opinion on how the cannabis industry will survive a world where someone like potentially Amazon could come in and decide to get into the cannabis world. So, how could these smaller cannabis retailers fight against something like Amazon? So yeah, if you like the video, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. You can follow us on Twitter at ihub_vision. And after a quick disclaimer, we'll hear from Ted. Please note that our videos are not designed to be direct investing advice. Our channel and our content should just be one stop on the journey of trying to find out where to put your money. So when we've talked about your model portfolio, you say that you generally shy away from investing in cannabis growers, right? The people that actually put the plants in the ground and harvest it. And you like to focus on people that are in the middle and at the end of the process, or someone that's like refining that raw product into something that is like a medicine. Like, for example, with LEXX, they're a biotech. Well, I was wondering, in the retail space of things, what would stop Amazon from creating the Amazon Green Zone or something along those lines, and then end up scooping up the market share of those small retailers? So do you think that these smaller companies can fight against the larger ones whenever cannabis is eventually legalized?
Oh, sure. For the same reason that not everybody buys on Amazon. So some people like the personal touch that you get when you go into a retailer. A company like KHRN, for example, that I follow, which is a retail distribution company, they also have an e-commerce division. They do e-commerce. But one of the things that a lot of the distributors, and KHRN would certainly be one of them, that they focus on is educating the consumer. And so they try to give them advice as to what sorts of things they can be trying, what the different products are, what might work for them, what doesn't. All of the things that you don't really get from Amazon. Now, there are lots of things that I buy on Amazon, but there are also lots of things that I don't buy on Amazon. And so, it's merchandising, it's competitive. All of those different channels will be there. But I think for the merchandiser, for the retailer, there'll always be a spot for them because they add the personal touch and they provide other services like education. I think actually Amazon already lists some CBD products. It's just business as normal.
So in the cannabis report before last, you mentioned that you heard some good vibes that we might actually be seeing the Safe Banking Act before we end up seeing Chuck Schumer's CAOA. And in some previous interviews that we did, you expressed that the kinds of things that are in the Safe Banking Act, like access to financial institutions, would be the thing that you're looking for whenever we're seeing legislation for cannabis investing in particular.
Yes, that's right. And so where that came from is, I think Yahoo did an interview. I can't remember exactly now, but was the CEO of TrueLeave and maybe Cresco, a couple of the larger U.S. multi-state operators, and both of them expressed the opinion that the Safe Banking Act looked like it was going to go ahead in the first quarter of 2022. And so if that happens, I think that will be a real boon to the cannabis group, because again, the companies, whether they're growers or whether they're distributors, inventory financing is a very basic service that almost every company requires. But if you're a cannabis company in the US, you can't get that. And, people, if you're a merchandiser, people like to come in and pay with their Visa or MasterCard. In the US, you can't do that. And so it would make a big difference to the industry. And it would also be an indication that we're not going to sit around and gamble everything on this sort of omnibus bill that tries to solve all problems for everybody all at once. And the industry has become accustomed to moving ahead one small step at a time, rather than, in one giant fell swoop. So if you have a broader bill like Chuck Schumer's bill, it makes it harder in the Senate, for example, for 10 Republicans to vote in favor of it, because there's too many chances that in there somewhere there'll be something they don't like. But if you say, gee, all we're trying to do is provide this legal industry with the banking services that any other legal industry has, then people can see that and are more willing to go ahead with it.
So I saw an interesting research study that was done by Pew Research, I believe back in April. It had an N value of 5,000, so they interviewed 5,000 people. And it's showing that the acceptance of marijuana for medical and recreational purposes has been increasing dramatically over the past few years. And then they referenced some previous studies to compare it to. So we're going to go a little bit into politics. We already kind of were in politics, but going to go a little bit deeper. Unfortunately, cannabis and politics are a pretty deeply intertwined industry. So I was wondering, given the fact that there's such a surge in acceptance of cannabis, why are we seeing political movements happen so slowly at the legislative level? I would think that politicians would be clamoring to try and get the vote of an increasingly pro-cannabis populace.
Yeah, Andrew, basically, I agree with that. I thought that with the election of the Democrats, and the promises that were made during the election, silly me, that they would have followed through on some of those things by now. But instead, they seem to have slowed the whole process down as well. I think that if you look at the longer running polls like Gallup, that go back into the 70s, I think, when an issue gets sort of around 70% acceptance, that's the point at which politicians jump on board. And that's about where we're at with legalization in the US right now. And so, yeah, I think we're at that stage. The difficulty a lot of people have, and it would be mostly Republicans in this case, is that they have to change their position. So for some reason, they were against it 5 years ago and now they're for it, or they were against it 3 years ago and now they're for it. And so that maybe is a little more difficult from a political point of view, but we're at that tipping point right now. And so, yeah, the acceptance of it by the public for medical purposes for sure, and in a lot of places for recreational uses, yeah, people are really getting on board. And it's also an international phenomenon. It's not just the United States and Canada. If you look all around the world now, Europe is certainly trending in the same direction. They may be lagging a little bit, but that's the direction they're going in. Certainly South America has had a long-standing relationship with cannabis in their culture. And so they're moving. And even to my surprise, in Asia, there's also some movement in favor of it. Now, Asia is lagging quite far behind because I think, they're the most strongly entrenched in anti-cannabis, anti-drug use. But even in Asia, it's moving in that general direction. So, it's a worldwide phenomenon that we're involved with, and these are the very early times. I know if you buy a stock and you wait a year and it hasn't gone anywhere, you think, oh my God, what a long wait this has been. But in the scheme of things, it's very, very short.
So, what's the latest and greatest with your cannabis portfolio, your model portfolio? Is there any movements or interesting things you'd like to highlight?
Well, sure. I mean, there's always lots to talk about. Right now, for example, KHRN just announced that they're initiating their share buyback program. And what that means to me is management thinks the price of their stock has gotten to a point that it's so attractive that buying it and retiring those shares is almost as good as opening another clinic. And so that, I think, augurs very well for their stock. You mentioned LEXX. LEXX has just come out with some terrific results combining their technology and CBD, which is a cannabis part of the cannabis plant, for treating hypertension. And hypertension is just a huge problem around the world, and they're getting very positive results. So, I think there's exciting things going on there. When you mention all the trends of people in favor of cannabis, increasingly in favor of cannabis, it brings to mind a company like KHRN, which I mentioned, which is a retailer, wholesaler, and e-commerce merchant of cannabis products. And again, all those trends moving in favor is very good for them. A survey done in Canada recently showed that people that were opposed to having a cannabis outlet open in their area, when they're surveyed after one's been opened, they say, yeah, it hasn't done harm to our neighborhood, and in fact, we've benefited from it. And so, all of these things are happening right now, and unfortunately, right now the cannabis stocks are not doing very well, and they've been in a slump since about February. But golly, I think this is a time to be getting on them in portfolios, and 2 or 3 years from now, you'll be very happy that you did.
Any final thoughts?
No, just my usual disclosure that you asked me to do. I don't own any of the stocks that I've talked about and have no plans to acquire them in the next few days.
Hey, thanks for watching. And the best thing you can do for us, if you haven't already, is to like and subscribe to the channel, and also leave us a comment. Tell us what you thought about the video. And yeah, I'll see you again soon.